everyone, and welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager, and I am your host today. Today, we are sponsored by the Weavers Guild of St. Louis, and they are honoring one of their guild members, Dorothy Haddock, in memory of Dorothy. I always think that's a wonderful way to honor one of your members, and I'm sure she's looking down and saying, thank you so much. So thank you, the St. Louis Weaving Guild. We appreciate you doing the sponsorship today. As always, please ask the questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in chat, but I don't always see those questions. So please put them in the Q&A. You can put them in both if you want. Today, we have Amy Putansu. I'm so excited to have her here. Amy has been making cloth since she began her textile education at the Rhode Island School of Design in 1991. This pursuit led mainly to the form of hand weaving on a Macomber loom. However, she's also designed cloth for jacquard that was woven at the Oriole Mill, designed and woven interiors, garment yardage on an AVL dobby loom, and even took a machine knitting class once. Her passion and area of expertise are weaving by hand, particularly with multi-layer fabrics and the ondulé reed, which we will talk more about later. Other techniques and ideas have been captured her interest since she became a full-time educator in 2008 at Haywood Community College in the renowned professional crafts program in North Carolina. These techniques focused on the Japanese art of shibori and can be combined with constructed hand-woven or well-chosen commercial fabrics to produce striking and original textiles. Amy grew up on the rocky shores of coastal Maine. Commercial fabrics to produce she grew up on the rocky coast of Maine, and her family is deeply rooted there for generations. The stark and raw nature of the coastal environment has influenced both her aesthetic sensibility and her approach to materials. And I think you'll see that in her artwork today. Hi, Amy. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy.
It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good to see you.
Well, we're going to start off with the big question. What is your favorite tea?
My favorite tea. Well, it's not very exotic, I'm afraid. I am not a black tea drinker. I prefer the herbal teas, but I do have two favorites for different occasions. And one of them is Sleepy Time Extra with valerian. Excellent tea, best sleep aid there is, I think.
I'll have to check that out.
Oh, it's good, Kathy. And then my other favorite tea is called Passion. It's a Tazo brand tea, has hibiscus, and I really like to drink that iced, actually.
Oh, we'll have to add those to our tea list.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, would you share with us how you got started in fiber? I've talked some about Rhode Island School of Design, but where did all the rest of you get started?
Yeah, well, it was in college that I got started with textiles. In high school, I went to a really small rural high school with a kind of a small art program, although that it was definitely my main interest, but there weren't a lot of media areas offered in my high school art program. So to be honest, I was not even aware that textiles was a thing at all when I applied to go to art school. So I only applied to one college, and it was RISD. And I went there thinking that I was going to study painting because that was one of the very few media areas that I was even aware of at the time. But halfway through freshman year, I took an elective in the textiles department, and it was pretty instantaneous. At the time, I also thought that it would be kind of a better, like a career move to study textiles instead of, getting a degree in painting. So I chose it as my major. And then after that, I got into the weaving classes, and it was just a complete fit. And I've never stopped since then. So
well, thank goodness for RISD. Way to go, RISD. And now you're at your own program at Haywood Community College, which is an amazing and very unique program. And one of the strengths, I think, of this program is that teaching, that the college teaches and also celebrates crafts. It's not like an elective, it's what the program is about. But your work, as we'll see as we go along, is very more, I'll probably get shot for this, on the artistic scale. If you look at crafts and arts on a scale, you would say they're at either end of those. So how do you find that personal balance between your work and what you teach?
Well, my career in textiles started out in the realm of functional fabrics, actually.
Okay.
So I had my own business, studio practice in Maine, and I was making all wearables, primarily scarves and shawls. So I was focused on function to some extent at that time. Because it was my livelihood. So it was, it was very important to be making marketable work and relatively affordable work.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I'm a full-time faculty person and I'm not relying on the sales of my own textiles, I have felt a little bit more freedom to stretch a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And I've been doing wall work for exclusively really for the past few years, definitely since I'd say 2016. And just really loving it. So having a bit of financial freedom to be able to do that, helped me take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
However, that being said, as far as Haywood goes, I do think it's valuable that I have experience in both realms, functional, limited production type of work, as well as fine art work. And I am extremely supportive of all of my students, regardless of what they want to pursue. And towards the end of the program, students become very keen on their own path, what they want to be studying and making. And it can be very diverse among any certain cohort. So I really enjoy supporting the one who is making garments and the one who is making sculptures and the one who is making, table linens. It's all equally valuable to me, and honestly, the best craft includes artistry. There is artistry. It's very important in design and in craft. So I don't see like a huge separation between that, but between all those things.
Well, as kind of an aside, I think one of the strengths of the program that you're in, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's also an area of teaching people how to market and the business side. And I think a lot of art schools don't do that. And that's really a disservice, because no matter what you do, you're going to have to sell something, right? And I think it's important to teach that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite true. Quite true. The marketing and business perspective at Haywood is definitely the number one thing that sets us apart from all of the other programs. And I did not get a business background or training in my college experience either. I'm quite certain there are a number of reasons for that, from institution to institution. But our program is called Professional Crafts, and the idea is to try to be a professional crafts person independently. And so therefore, the selling is critical.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Your work, and we're going to talk some more about your work, but one of the things that struck me about your work, it has such a painterly quality to it. And you can't say that very often about weaving, that over-under structure. And one of the things as I learned more about you and I read more about you, is that you have an admiration of several painters. And one of them was Agnes Martin, who I was not familiar with. I was very excited to learn about her. And where we have a comparison of two works of art. One is yours on the left, and one is Agnes Martin. And I was so struck by the similarity, the use of color and structure. Would you agree with that, or am I oversimplifying that?
No, well, I mean, of course, I've never seen these two pieces side by side until you made this slide, and it is kind of uncanny, like, wow. Um, I wasn't aware of Agnes Martin for a long time either. It was when I was first starting to show my fabrics in my early to mid 20s, starting to exhibit them publicly, that it was actually like customers' response. I remember, I think more than one individual said, "Do you know the painter Agnes Martin? Your work reminds me of hers." So this is a really long time ago. This is in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, and I adore her work. So Agnes really, she examines stripes and bands and the grid. All of these things are so natural to weaving. All of those things define weaving, really. So I would say that she's as much of a craftsman, and even with a real textile sensibility, probably more so than I am, like a painter.
Mhm.
However, so it's this pair of images is really interesting too, because Gulf Stream was directly inspired by a particular painting, something very different than Agnes Martin's work. It's actually the painting by Winslow Homer,
Uh-huh.
the same name, Gulf Stream, which is there's an individual in a skiff in a really rough, roiling seas, struggling to row, and it's the mood of that painting is a lot pretty anxious and pretty scary. My version of Gulf Stream is distilled down and down and down and down to like basically just sea and sky, with a totally different mood, I think, than the original.
Now, was this the painting? Was it an African American man rowing?
Mm-hmm.
I think I know the painting you're
Yeah, it's a very
talking about.
famous painting.
Yeah. Um, well, when we look at that, we see the waves in there, and some people are very familiar with the ondulé weaving reed, and you use it a lot in your work. So these next images will be showing the reed, and one of your works that I thought was a real good example of the outcome of that. Can you talk some about how you got started with this reed, and which came first? Did you start using the reed and that just kind of was the path you took, or were you looking for that particular structure and then you found the reed?
So I first started working with and my very first ondulé reed back in, it might have been 2000, 99 or 2000. And I knew next to nothing about the technique because like almost nothing was written about it at the time. There are like 2 pages in Anne Sutton's book, Ideas in Weaving, where she has a picture and talks very briefly a couple of fabrics of warp ondulé, and that's where I saw it for the first time, and that's what got me seeking this tool. And it was not easy to find at all. I really searched far and wide at the time, for a long time, until I did manage to get a contact who was able to get a reed for me from overseas. And
You had to go overseas to get it?
yeah, my first
Wow.
reed came from Japan.
Huh.
I mean, I didn't go there, but my contact did.
Right.
Yeah, and brought it back. So I had the reed, and that was amazing. And then I very quickly realized, so how do you use this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not as straightforward you don't operate the loom in the same way with this type of reed if you want to achieve the waves. So that's kind of a long technical explanation that I won't get into. But anyway, so the next the next part of the journey was developing a way to use the reed effectively to get the waves in the cloth. And that also took some time. So, but I was not in my my fine artwork or, you know, expressive mode at that time. I was still making functional fabrics. But I was always looking for, you know, new, innovative, inventive techniques and materials to incorporate into my wearable fabrics. So that was the motivation to explore this ondulé reed. So it really had nothing to do with what it means to me today. So years went by and I was just dabbling with the ondulé, still making wearables, learning how to use the tool. And then in 2008, I became a full-time teacher and as I said before, able to kind of like stretch out and branch out into more fine art weaving, take some risks. And I have been weaving with the ondulé reed exclusively only for years now. I haven't used a regular reed in a long time. So, and it did not occur to me right away either, particularly until I started to turn the fabrics sideways, that the connection became so clear to me. Between the technique and the effect that warp ondulé gives, and, you know, waves and water and ocean. And, you know, in terms of making fine art pieces, I think it's important for a person, or this is my approach, happens to be that I want to talk about what I know and what I care about, you know, where I'm from and who I am. So, which is largely about the ocean and the coast and etc. So it just happened. It was like, oh, look at, I'm already involved in sort of the perfect technique to carry out what's really important to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's amazing work. It's just amazing work. And a couple of people have been mentioning it. It's hard work, that there's a little more to it than just beating like you do with a regular reed. Is that true?
There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
It's very slow. And well, the way that I do it, which is different than most of the folks that are using these reeds today, because they have become a little bit more common. I made up my own method of using the tool, as most people did, because, you know, there was nothing, there were no directions, there was no guide whatsoever. So in my research, I have found that anyone who was lucky enough to find a reed literally invented their own way of using it. So anyway, my way is a little bit different. It ends up being really slow and actually really physical. Getting up and sitting down and getting up and sitting down and changing where the fell line is and where the harnesses are and so on and so forth. So, but it's, in fact, the whole motion of the getting up, sitting down, changing the fell line, you know, moving the cloth forward, moving the cloth back. That's all, as it turns out, very sort of wave-like as well. There's a lot of and forth and up and down.
Do you recall by chance how big this piece is? You don't know, you need the exact dimensions, but a rough guesstimate.
I'm going to say it's roughly probably 36 by 36 inches.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. My largest ondulé reed is 46 inches.
Oh, okay. Well, the next series we're going to talk about is called Store Cloth, and it focuses on the wastefulness of fast fashion. And these images show how you've taken unwanted cloth or disposed of cloth and you've incorporated it into something beautiful weavings. They're just gorgeous. So where did the inspiration come from? And I believe this is a detail of the one on the left. You can see the buttons. And So
Yeah.
where did all that come from? How did you land on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, interesting story. This is a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking at like a competitive sort of grant program called the Southern Prize. And the wording is different nowadays. I actually checked the website again recently, but a few years ago, there was something in the wording where, okay, so artists in this particular southern range of states, they're
Uh-huh.
eligible to apply. And another criteria was that the work had something to do with being in the South, or what it's like to be in the South, or what the South is like or embodies, or something. It was something like that. And it was a friend told me about this grant, and thought that I should look into it. And my immediate response was, I have nothing to say about the South. I don't, I'm like so not from here. And so, exploring the sort of coastal themes and New England and so on and so forth. There's absolutely nothing I can say about the South. But then I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought, wait a minute, of course there is something that I can say about the South that I care really deeply about, and that I had been learning about, which was the whole Appalachian tradition of weaving.
Oh,
Yeah, mountain weaving, the whole history of coverlets in this region, the book Weavers of the Southern Highlands,
uh-huh.
such an excellent book. And that was very inspirational during when I made this series. There was a series of 3 pieces like this. But anyway, so in thinking about the evolution of like the making of cloth from the time when people were making their own cloth at home for themselves and their own family, fast forward to today, where people don't even know where cloth comes from or how it's made, and there is such an excess, as we all know. So that's what this series is about, and this is a really large one. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 30 some odd inches wide by maybe 48 inches high or something. And so the materials I worked with were garments that I collected from the Goodwill bins in Asheville, which is like, that's the place where garments go after they've already been at the Goodwill store and not so they've been discarded and discarded and discarded again. And the bins is like the last stop for these garments. And there's just bins and bins and bins full of them. And what happens to these garments if they don't sell at the bins is and this I think is very ironic and weird, they get crated up and shipped to other countries. So anyway, that's where I collected all of the fabrics for this series. This particular one is made completely with silk garments.
Wow, these are silk?
These are silk.
Wow.
And
yeah.
it took them all apart, took apart all of the garments, and left intact when I could buttons or tags or serging from seam edges, because it was important to me for the fact that it is clothing to be evident, at least subtly.
Mm-hmm.
And stripped those fabrics into rag, and used that rag as a pattern weft to weave a really iconic Appalachian overshot pattern, which is double bow knot. Although, of course, it looks very elongated here because my rag was so thick. So it is distorted, of course. And then the rest of the next piece in the series was made entirely with cotton garments.
Mhm.
And it was another iteration, an original iteration on the double bow knot pattern. And the third piece was all polyester,
Oh,
which actually has a big tag sort of somewhere in the middle that says polyester, sort of sticking out of the face of the fabric. That piece went to the Penland annual auction a few years back. But anyway, and then that was a third iteration on the double bow knot. So I was, bringing this what is now waste, discarded, wasted garments into this really iconic and historically significant pattern, especially for Appalachia. Anyway, long story, I didn't get the grant. In fact, I don't even think I met the deadline, but
oh.
but it was a really interesting journey for me.
Uh-huh. Now, the book you're talking about, is that Phyllis Alvick's book?
Yes.
Okay, I've put it in the chat. And for those of you who went to Convergence, she was there. She talked about her book. And I think some of you probably actually got it there, but it's a fact-packed book and just amazing, the journey of weaving during that time. So I encourage y'all to take a look at it. It's pretty amazing. And in looking at it, I think about the stories in those books and how different it would have been.
Things really changed for the Appalachian weavers once commercially made cloth became more widely available.
Yeah.
The term for it was store cloth. So that, therefore, the title of the series.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that term.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing. Being from New England, I did not have any knowledge of the rich weaving heritage in Southern Appalachia, until I moved here. And I've gained a huge appreciation for it.
Well, not to get on my soapbox, but I am. I went to school at the University of Kentucky, and I studied Appalachian life and folklore and everything. None of that was mentioned. I didn't know about any of this until a few years ago when I saw Phyllis's book, which we could talk about the whys of that forever, but I'm just glad she wrote the book. I think it's important information. It needs to be out there. And thank you for doing the piece. And I think the grant people were silly that they didn't take it, even if it was late. In some artworks you look at, when I look at some artworks, it's like, oh, I like that, and I get it, and I move on, and I just take it at face value. I'm sure other people do too. But this next piece, and I have no idea why, but the next two pieces that we're going to show, I think it's called Deserve and Deserve One and Deserve Two. There was something about that just kind of drew me in. Maybe it's the circle mandala-like thing. But I was really struck by this piece, and I was just hoping that you would talk some about the fibers involved and the gold. It's just beautiful and very unique. If you would talk some about these pieces.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's really interesting that you have such a strong response to these pieces. And
I love these pieces.
I'd love to find out more about that in detail. But yeah, this is from quite a while ago, and it is a diptych, and there's resist dyeing involved. You can probably recognize some stitched resist shibori type of dyeing going on. Indigo. The gold is gold leaf that's applied at the end, and I don't recall like precisely what my thought process was at the time, but I feel like the notion of being deserving is really strange to me. I feel really mixed about this notion of deserve. Like, what does that mean? And does one person deserve more than another? And anyway, just this really sort of conflicting notion for me, deserving. And I was definitely thinking of that at the time. And, sometimes I will I'll go through kind of a process where I'm thinking about like, so what would that thought look like? What does that notion look like? What does it feel like? You know, what color is that? What does that idea
Mhm.
look like? And so I probably don't have a ton of words to describe it, but it was definitely the inner circle that's depicted in these pieces
Mhm.
as sort of being the one who is from the perspective of the deserver, being contained within these radiating broken circles. That's what deserving would look like to me.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, um, did you find that you did one and said, "Oh, I want to try it differently. There's something important I've got to do," or did you find that you just said, "Let's try this again," and then it just changed on its own?
They were both happening kind of
Oh,
simultaneously.
okay.
The positive space, negative space, central circle
Hmm.
was really the starting point.
Okay.
Um, so you know those were both established first, and then the rest of it evolved kind of around it. The pink area, it's a little bit hard to see, but if you can imagine, those both of those pink areas are actually like handkerchiefs that have been resist dyed and then stripped into strips like rag and laid in to the ground cloth,
Wow.
like little bit like Theo Mormon, but not really. And then of course
Uh-huh.
the whole thing is using the ondulé reed as well, so the waves occur and kind of distort the circles. I'm really interested in how the warp ondulé distorts things. That's sort of always part of the concept in most of my work.
Yeah, again, it's one of those pieces that you wish you could see in real life, you know? It's a good photo, but oh, I'd love to have seen that in real life. Yeah.
Mhm.
It has been pointed out to me that I'm very confused because I really was at Convergence and Phyllis was not. She had some health issues and was not there. I'm sorry, I'm confused. But
She was
you know,
supposed to be there.
she was supposed to be there, and we were very sorry that she had some illness and couldn't. But we did put some information in chat about if you do want to take a look at her book. You had a piece that was purchased by the Renwick Gallery. That's part of the Smithsonian Art Museum. How did that impact on you and your work? Congratulations, by the way. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really just super proud of that accomplishment as well.
As you should be. That's awesome.
Yeah, that happened. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. So that was pretty like, whew, felt pretty awesome at the time. This picture is, you know, sadly not showing off this really large shawl or wrap to, you know, to the best, to its best light. But at any rate, yeah, that was in 2002. And it happened at a craft show. I was at a craft show in Washington, D.C., and the curator at the time, Kenneth Trapp, came into my booth, and he was wearing a name tag. So this was not the Smithsonian Craft Show. It was a different the Washington Craft Show at the time. So a whole different producer. But I noticed that he had on, his name badge said Smithsonian. And I was immediately keen on talking to him because assuming that he had something to do with the Smithsonian Craft Show, which I really wanted to get into because at the time it would have been a great selling venue for me. So anyway, then I found out, no, it's not the craft show that he's involved with. It's actually the museum itself. And he is the one who chooses, or at the time chose, purchases. So he actually worked with another person to acquire the piece, a very wonderful, supportive person from Maine who was interested in supporting both the museum and a young weaver. And so together they made the acquisition. And it's a double weave, actually. It's a double cloth. The red side and the black side are two separate fabrics, really, but woven simultaneously. And the title of the piece is Interlocking. So, it's a double layer weave where the red and the black are just moving in and out of each other. So it's literally woven as two interlocked fabrics. And so how it changed my career or my life. Well, what's funny is, and hopefully some of my students are listening to this, because at the time I didn't go to Haywood, so I did not learn how to market myself properly. And I like really never told anybody that this happened. I mean, it would have been, I had a friend who was an editor. She worked in, publicity on some level. And it was many, many, many months later, she brought to my attention what a sort of a PR, a wonderful PR opportunity this would have been at the time. For example, going home from the craft show and maybe, getting a story written, getting some publicity about this awesome thing that happened. This young weaver from Maine gets a piece acquired by the Renwick, blah, 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 whatever. But I didn't take advantage. And I would tell my students, make sure you publicize this awesome thing that happened. I didn't do any of that. I didn't tell anyone. So I missed the boat on that.
Well, we'll do our small part here today. How's that? It's not much, but well, I think it's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You deserve it.
There's that weird word again.
There's that word again. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the chat's popping up over here about that piece. I'll have to send that to you. You also described weaving as building from scratch. I've never heard that before about weaving. I think it's wonderful. I can't hear the rest. Can't wait to hear the rest of it. And that you use color and dyeing of the yarn also as part of, is that also part of building from scratch, is the dyeing and so if you could just talk more about the color use that you have, which we're going to look at these two pieces, and then also the whole concept of coming from scratch.
Yeah, well, I mean, making fabrics, especially hand woven fabrics, but other textile constructions too, it really is like you're building something from nothing. I mean, you're building something you start from, little fibers. Of course, I'm not spinning my own yarn or anything, but, and I also talk about it, especially to help non-weavers, but people who appreciate art, wall art particularly, help them understand what does make this different than from a traditional painting where, color is applied to a substrate. So I make the point that this work is actually like building the substrate from scratch and incorporating the color and the line work and the composition and all of the formal elements from beginning to end, if that makes sense. Right. So as far as color inspiration, I've done the most recent couple of series or bodies of work that I've made. I was working from photographs of landscapes and seascapes, the pictures that I had taken, skyscapes sometimes, working from photographs for the color inspiration and the compositional layout, and really paying close attention to the proportions and going from there to the dye work. And I do a lot of dye work in my pieces. oftentimes dye will be used on the yarns, before I even set up the loom. Sometimes dye is added during the weaving while the fabric is being made and it's under tension on the loom. And then sometimes I also incorporate dyeing after the fabric is complete and off the loom. And some pieces have dye applied at all three stages, or any or all of the stages. So they become pretty complex, multi-process pieces. And during that entire process, because truly, weaving is so different than painting and certainly different than photography, the entire image ends up being quite an abstraction of the original landscape that inspired it. So I definitely let the work go where it's acting like it wants to go during the process as well, as opposed to, like over orchestrating things. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Mm.
I love the colors. You could just get lost in those.
Yeah, thank you.
You also work in mixed media, and we've got one piece here and with the detail that's a pretty interesting combination of textures. And again, if you would talk some about this piece. So what they represent for you, the story behind this piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this piece is called Deep Local, and it's also it's pretty large. It's probably 40 some odd inches wide and I don't know, 50 some odd inches tall, something like that.
Uh-huh.
But it's pretty large. And it is woven with the ondulé reed, but the waves are pretty subtle. You can see them going, vertically. And barbed wire is used as weft. So I bought property here. I bought a house on a couple of acres of land out here in Haywood County in North Carolina. And, I'm settling down here. And I actually found this, a huge coil of barbed wire on my property.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of it, and I still have plenty. And I definitely want to work with it some more. But at any rate, most of my work, as we have seen, it focuses on where I come from, sort of my background, my heritage, my roots from coastal New England, a lot about the ocean and all of that, and not so much about where I am now. So this piece is very much an investigation of or an expression of where I live now. Mm-hmm. And barbed wire is it can be pretty significant to people on personal levels. What it is for me, it represents, it's very symbolic of farmland, like the rural farming area that I live in now out here in Haywood County. And while I was making this piece and thinking about fence lines, I got curious about how many barbed wire fences, how much length of barbed wire is in Haywood County along fence lines. And so I did this like crazy extrapolation by, going to, some public records and taking averages of land that is for farm use only, and a square mile, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I came up with this like huge number of miles of barbed wire that I imagine exist in Haywood County. But anyway, this piece, Deep Local, it's a lot about where I live now. Uh-huh. And where I come from too, because it's a real watery background that the barbed wire is resting in.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe you went through all of that to get that information. You're dedicated.
Yeah. Well, the research part is pretty fun, and you never know where that's going to take you
Well,
either.
that's true. That's true.
And what else is that going to trigger that could be useful in your artwork?
True. True. Well, thinking about where things take you. My next question is, you have won the lottery. Now, if you're reasonable, you're never ever going to have to worry about making money ever again.
Mm.
So, I mean, everybody always does this question. You're sitting around with your friends. You always do this what if. So we're going to do what if now. What would you do? What would change in your life, your work, whatever, if money was never ever going to be a problem again?
Well, that would be amazing.
Yes.
I think for one thing, I know my life would change in ways that I can't even imagine right now.
True.
But anyway, what I can say, I'm not sure what I would do. But what I do know right now is I was able to spend this summer on an island in Maine, a tiny little unbridged, no ferry to the island, quite off the grid, in a little very rustic cabin without plumbing. And anyway, I spent 6 weeks on that island with my dog and very, very, very few other people. And if I could do anything, I would probably try to design a situation that was like that.
Really?
I really, really love that. I would somehow design a life where I was living by the ocean, could walk to the ocean, walk on the beach every single day with my dog. Super quiet, like total, just the silence and the solitude. I think I would try something like that if I could, as a full-time basis.
I love that. And when you were there, did you have a loom?
No, there was a loom there, but I didn't use it, actually. I didn't know there was going to be a loom there. That was crazy too. I was renting this cabin from people I didn't know very well at all. And the issue of weaving never came up between us. But when I arrived, it turns out that she is a hobby weaver and had a table loom, like a little Ashford table loom in the cabin. So I felt like that was a sign, for one thing, that I really belonged there.
Yes.
But no, I did other stuff while I was there. I did some bobbin lace and some netting, making nets.
Which is appropriate, for an island.
Yep.
Making nets.
Mm-hmm.
We have tons of questions. You want to do some questions here real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This is from Sharon Horn. Not a question, Amy. Just wanted to say hi. It's been years. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, Sharon.
You got some shout outs in the chat too, I'm sure. Let's see. How can local weaving businesses help your Haywood Community College program? Do you have an internship program? Are guest lecturers from the industry of interest? Are donations helpful? This is from Gina Wicker.
Okay. Wow, that's such a wonderful question.
Yeah.
Thank you for being interested. Well, one thing, we do have a visiting artist program. And we haven't been able to use the program very much in the past couple of years because of the pandemic, but we're picking that back up again. And so it enables us to bring in professionals, speakers, workshop leaders, demonstrators, a few times a year, depending. And so that's a way to bring community members into the studio. Haywood does not have a formal apprenticeship program or internship program, rather. However, a lot of graduates and even current students do work for existing craft businesses or textile businesses in the area during and after their time at Haywood. And I feel really strongly that one of the best ways to gain experience after graduation is to go to work for another small business study it like as a business model,
Mm,
on the job training, so to speak. That's what I did after graduation. I went immediately to work for a small company on the West Coast and learned so much, just as
yeah.
much as I did during my college program. And then another company on the East Coast in women's clothing design. So, so all the local textile makers, professionals out there in the community, please consider hiring Haywood graduates because they are very good.
And they have a wonderful teacher.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, a lot of people are asking how-to questions about using the ondulé reed, and we just can't get into a lot of that today. I would encourage you to contact Amy on our website, and we'll have that up in a minute also. And she could probably direct you to how to set up a workshop with her or someone else. But there are a couple of questions I think you can answer, within reason and a reasonable amount of time. This is from Paula Nessoff. She wants to know, can you use, and I'm curious about this too, can you use that kind of reed on a rigid heddle loom?
Ooh, what a good question. I have used the reed on a bunch of different makes and models of looms over the years for various reasons, but never a rigid heddle. I bet there would be a way, but again, it's a funny thing. You're really sort of like rigging something up, so to speak, to make the tool work for you and produce the waves, completely dependent on your specific equipment. So I bet it could be done, but I've personally never done it.
Deb Bart says, love your work, Amy. Hi, Deb.
Love Deb.
Oh, this is interesting. Susan Simpson said, just a comment, when we were in Kenya, we saw where these bins of clothing were deposited, pile and piles. We had mixed feelings about these. That's interesting that she saw the end in location of that.
Yeah.
Sue Reynolds wants to know, how's the gold leaf applied to the cloth? Is that like a surface design technique afterwards?
Just like, yes, it's a surface design technique done afterwards. I handle the material just like when applying gold leaf to any other substrate with the adhesive. Okay. Leaf adhesive. And kind of using a brush to tap it down. What I really like about applying gold leaf to a textile surface is because it's textural. And so the gold leaf is so thin that it picks up that background texture, and there's even more play of light on the gold.
A couple of people are asking about the type of dyes you use, synthetic, natural, source.
I have done some pieces with natural dyes. We saw the one with indigo, but more often these days I am using fiber reactive dye, actually. Okay.
And I think you already talked about, maybe not. Lynn Hart wants to know, can you incorporate double weave structure on an ondulé weaving? Can you? Ooh, fun. There you go, Lynn. We want to see the end product. So
it's very
fun. On that.
Actually, well, I submitted to a Convergence yardage exhibit with a piece of double weave ondulé fabric.
Oh, okay.
Years ago, a few years ago, double weave blocks.
And they also wanted, and you kind of said this, but that reed can fit in most floor looms, right? Or even table looms, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the loom doesn't matter. You can use any loom.
Yes, you can. I mean, it will fit in the beater. You can set it in the beater of basically any loom, right? The trick is you have to be beating the fabric, with the reed at various levels, back and forth.
Oh, okay. So you need some distance, weaving distance.
Yeah.
Oh, so it'd be a little bit tougher on a table loom versus a big floor loom.
Yeah, a deeper area of for weaving is definitely beneficial.
Okay. Brandy Adcock says, you are an amazing person and the best instructor in the world. Thank you. Is finals coming up here, Brandy?
So sweet. Oh.
Well, there's tons more questions, and they've been asking about how to hang things and all kinds of questions. I'm sorry we can't get to them. If you would, again, go to her website, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute, and ask your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them today, but thank you so much for being here today, Amy. It has been wonderful and exciting to see your work. Again, I encourage you all to go to PutansuTextiles.com. You can learn more about Amy's work and see more about Amy's and her work. If you're interested in her program, it is, if you can get more information about the program that she's a part of, it's Haywood Community College, and it's in North Carolina. So again, and I do want to thank our sponsor today. It is the Weavers Guild of St. Louis, and it's in memory of Dorothy Haddock. Thank you, Weavers Guild of St. Louis. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. We appreciate it. If you would like to be a sponsor, or if you would like to get your business or your guild or your school to sponsor, please go to weavespindye.org, and you can learn more about being a sponsor of Textiles and Tea. We wanted to thank everybody who is supporting our drive for 100 donations in 100 days. We are up to, we need 79 more. We're making progress getting there. If you haven't heard about this, we're going to be coming on our 100th episode of Textiles and Tea, which is amazing. We thought we'd do it for a few months and then stop. And here we are, we're going into another year of it. So if you would like to help us celebrate 100 episodes by donating $100, we'd like to get 100 donations of $100 before our 100th episode, which will be in November. Please go to weavespindye.org, and you can donate there. Thank you so much for all of you who have already donated. We appreciate it. It'll be fun. Spinning and Weaving Week is coming up, closer than we all can imagine. All kinds of things going on. Another example of how your donations help. This program happens because of the donations to weavespindye.org. We have sponsorships available. Again, if your guild or your business would like to have a sponsorship, we have advertising opportunities. We've got thread talks, marketplace live, the fashion show. I want y'all to start getting your stuff ready for the informal fashion show we do. Anybody can join, show off that shawl, those tablecloths. We want to see those. If you want more information, be sure you go weavespindye.org. Some of our episodes our classes are filling up fast, because we do have Art Sparks this year. That's brand new. So some little mini classes, some of those are filling up. So if you are interested in some classes, you might want to take a look at those real quick and join up. We'd love to have you there. If you missed any of the episodes of Textiles and Tea and would like to watch them with a friend or just watch them again, you can do that. They are filmed and they are live on, they're on our Facebook page, but also are being uploaded to YouTube. You can go there, and I would encourage you to subscribe, because when you do, you'll get a notice that another one was uploaded to YouTube. Thank you so much again for being here this week. We hope you have a lovely week, and you will join us next week when we will have Karen Clancy. She is from the Williamsburg Center up there, and runs their weaving program at Colonial Williamsburg. It will be interesting to hear how that works. So thank you so much for being here. Hope you have a fantastic week, and happy tea.